appointment tomorrow.
Don't pass out like I do.
At the eye doctor?
That's good. When they would like puff the air on your eye.
Yeah, that would make you pass out. Oh my God, that's so funny.
It was really embarrassing. They had already done the puffy thing, and then they went right into like, okay, one or two, like showing you the different.
Yep, with your head inside the machine.
Yeah, and I just all of a sudden I couldn't hear anything, and I just broke out in a sweat, and I was like I couldn't even hear my voice talking.
Good thing your head's in there and you just took a nap.
And I was just like, I think
she's like, your eyes are closed.
And then I just remember she was like, whoa, and took the thing, and I just like slumped in the chair. It was like 2 seconds, and it was like cute young eye doctor, and he came in, he's like, heard you feeling a little woozy. And I'm literally sitting there sweating. Then when I went to the eye doctor this time, I told them, just so you know, I passed out, and he's like, oh yeah, vasovagal syncope. That's what it's called. That's what happened to you. They stimulated your vagus nerve, and it makes you go down. And yeah, I guess it's a thing. But apparently that's what happened to me. I literally passed.
I'm going to pass out now at the doctor just thinking about it.
Don't. It'll be fine. But anyway, hello.
Hi. Welcome to 6 Feet Unfiltered.
I'm Chloe.
I'm Courtney.
And
we're season 2.
Season 2. We made it.
We are best friends from Hibbing, Minnesota, by the way, from elementary school.
The good old Iron Range.
And we're back to bring you some unfiltered, feminist, funny, non-BS talk.
And process through the amazing show that is 6 Feet Under with you.
And I just have to point out quick, every single comment, like we've had 4. And every time we see one, it reminds us that we're doing this not just for us, but for at least another person.
At least one other person.
And that keeps us going. So if you have it in you and you want to give us a little shout out in the comments.
Also, I'm so proud of our most recent episode before this one, our tier lists that we made. Neither Courtney or I had any idea
what the fuck it was.
What tier list.
It was a request.
Yeah, but we figured it out and we did it, and I'm so proud of it. But I also now know of another thing that is apparently popular amongst the youths and YouTubers and whatnot that we don't know about. It's called blind ranking.
Ooh.
And usually you're supposed to do it with 5 things, but I thought it would be kind of fun if we started this season. There's 13 episodes in this season, just like there were in season 1. So what we would do is we watched the first episode of season 2. So we're going to choose a slot right now or at the end of the episode to put it in, but then we can't change it and we don't know what's coming. And then we see at the end
love it.
If we agree on where we placed.
Because then we'll do the tier listing anyways.
Yeah.
And we'll look to see what we did.
So just based on this one watch of the.
So we have to put this in 1 through 13. Mm-hmm. 13 being the worst, 1 being the best.
Yes.
And we don't know what episode is happening after this. Mm-hmm. But next week we'll know what we put this one in. And let's say we put it in 5. We can't put the next one in 5.
Right.
Oh, I like it. Strategery.
So then episode 13, we'll just end up having to go whatever slot is left. So we'll have to also keep that in mind.
It'll be interesting if what we actually think about it.
Yes. We do it at the beginning or at the end? Maybe at the end.
We should do it at the end when we do date, mate, cremate.
Yes. And I forgot to put that in our notes, so don't forget at the end to do
I won't.
date, mate, cremate.
Also, I don't know if you noticed, but we actually got... from all 4 of your comments, they pushed us out so far in the world of podcasts, and we got sponsored by My Living Room.
I was just like, whoa.
So if you notice a little bit different scenery, we actually moved out of my office and into the living room where it's a little cozier.
Yeah, the reality is we are in our 30s and our backs hurt on the click-clack futon you have up there.
I call it my OnlyFans futon.
Yeah.
Oh, fucker. Lipstick.
Is it?
No.
Lipstick or
back? Okay, good.
Okay.
Speaking of that, it wasn't a booger in her tooth. It was lipstick, but I was at gymnastics today with Violet, and Beepers is my 2-year-old, and we're done with gymnastics, and I'm like, Beep, go get your stamp, and she's like... And I'm like, oh, you dig in your nose? And she goes farther back. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Hands me her booger.
Great.
And so I flicked it, you know.
Lovely.
Yeah, I don't know why that just reminded me of today's.
I was digging.
Scenario. Yeah, that's probably what it was. I was like, oh, I've seen this
Okay.
before. Yeah.
Okay.
Am I?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's get into it. So today we're kicking off season 2 of 6 Feet Under with episode 14 of the series, In the Game. Nate finally gets a firm diagnosis on his AVM and a brutal reality check from a truly insufferable doctor.
Glad you thought the same thing.
Brenda is clearly spiraling. David is dealing with the aftermath of heartbreak and gonorrhea, and Ruth throws a painfully awkward family dinner to introduce her new romantic partner.
Nikolai.
Yes. Rico tries to upsell a cremation. Claire takes Gabe into the prep room, and a stray ecstasy tab sends Nate into a full-on trip complete with cosmic Chinese checkers.
What's Chinese checkers?
The game they were playing with life and death. And
Oh, okay.
I used to play that with my grandma all the time when I was
Gert?
little. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's actually kind of weird, but I loved it. Okay. This episode is chaotic, emotional, and laced with some of the most memorable and bizarre moments of the series so far. Let's get into it.
Okay, so we open this episode with what seems like a textbook slasher flick. A woman alone at home, sensing danger. P.S. I didn't know what the fuck was going on, and I was getting nervous. I was sitting in my office watching this on my laptop, and I'm like, thank God I didn't try to watch this last night by myself. I hate scary shit. She's sitting at home alone, sensing danger. The tension builds until a masked man bursts in and brutally murders her. But then the lights come up. It's a movie premiere, and the victim is actress Rebecca Milford, relishing the audience's horrified delight. She's glowing, soaking in the praise, riding the high of a successful performance. But the after party brings a different kind of high. Rebecca slips away to the bathroom to do a bump of cocaine, then again, and again, and again. Each time, she looks a little more unsteady, a little more detached from the glitz and glamour outside those stall doors. By her third visit, the celebration turns deadly. Alone in the bathroom stall, Rebecca overdoses and dies. No applause, no audience, just silence. It's a darkly ironic twist. A woman who just thrilled a theater full of people with a fake death scene succumbs to a very real, very lonely one. Another reminder that behind the curtain of performance and fame, mortality waits, unflinching, unglamorous, and all too real. Who writes this stuff? Like, damn, girl, why do you have no notes on this death scene?
I don't know. It was
Is
just
it different?
sad.
Yes, it was a different kind of episode
Yeah.
that I just wasn't prepared for. Okay, so my first thoughts was, who is she? Because she looks so familiar. I know she's in something. And second of all, this is scary as fuck. I'm freaking the fuck out. Oh my God, okay, it was just the movie. Gah. That was my thought. I was so freaked out. And then what pissed me off in that opening scene was her press or her PR lady.
Or whatever.
Yeah, her agent was like, you basically need to
We don't want you to get pigeonholed.
pigeonholed. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So don't show your tits anymore. And I was like, the fuck? Why does that happen? And I know this was in the 2000s, but I really wanted to bring this up because in today's world, we value transparency more than we did. At least that's what my brand. All of my branding, my hair, my sex coaching, any of this stuff is full transparency. And I value that more than even in my band. I flash at the end of every show. I flash the crowd. And it's part of my free the nipple movement, you know? And so that just pissed me off that you get into these things, you get big, like the Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, and they just start coaching you down into this small little box of what they think is supposed to be. But really, if you're just true to yourself, the right people are going to navigate towards you.
Right. But yeah, I think you said it, but
It was back in the day.
Perfect for, how long ago was that? 2001. It's 2025. So 24 years ago, almost. That's like getting close to 30 years ago. And then think about 30 years before that, like just how many things. I mean, I feel like we're going backward now, but I don't know.
Right. We do kind of take some steps backwards, but it was interesting for me to watch that. And then also being a person who is in the public eye, like a publicish figure. Not really, like, I'm not Barack Obama or anything, but my face is a lot of places. And
Right.
I just kept thinking, fuck that shit. It reminded me of Taylor Swift too. Her story of,
Is this like in her documentary or something?
No, it's just public knowledge. She was with a producer, and if I'm getting any of this wrong, feel free to drop it in the comments. But she was with a bunch of producers, and they basically took half of her money.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so Kelly Clarkson told her, hey, you should.
So that's where like Taylor's version comes.
Taylor's version. So she went and re-recorded all of her stuff to get the royalties, and people told her, nobody's going to re-buy your albums. If they already have your album, they're not going to re-buy it just because you did. Bitch, motherfucking please. Move over and watch me.
Dr. Luke? Is that who the guy was?
I don't know. And I think there was assault too in there.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know who that was from, but
the entertainment business is cray, obviously.
And this was a stark reminder for that.
Yeah, it was also interesting to like just rethinking back now about the death scene, about how she was portrayed and how all like her posse, her friends, her boyfriend were all portrayed very dumb, honestly.
Yeah. She was 21, I think, is the math that I did. Not saying that 21 is super young, but when I was 21, I was dumb.
Yeah, it was just, there's an element of that, of being young and being, we find out later more about her backstory and stuff, so it all makes sense. But it was, I felt like they were really laying it on thick, the stereotype
like overdoing
of being just a young, dumb star, you know, starlet. But anyway, yeah, it was an interesting death scene. And,
it was.
The graphics of it, like when she starts overdosing.
Did so good.
It was, and the makeup and everything, it was just...
honestly, and I think that alone, too, it gave me goosebumps. Like, what a powerful scene that actually still today exists.
Yeah. And she was doing it, it kind of appeared as though she was doing it to make herself feel better in a way, because she kept getting kind of, like, first it was her agent saying, we don't want you to get pigeonholed, you can't show your tits anymore, and then she was talking to her boyfriend, and he said something dumb too, and then it was like every time she would just go back in, and...
she was triggered by something.
Or just...
She was probably triggered by being told to be small.
Or just trying to like get by in this like environment, which is how the stories usually
It's like
go.
you going to school, being a teacher. Well, but she never did cocaine in the bathroom.
Or any substances, to be clear. But
you probably thought about it.
I definitely wanted to. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, you do things to cope. And especially in an environment like that, it's so normalized and whatever.
Totally accessible too.
Yeah. But... okay, so then right after that, we see Nate and Brenda having sex, and Brenda stops Nate and tells him that she's not going to come. And then Brenda snaps at Nate when he asks what's wrong, and Brenda expresses that she feels off after the car accident. And we find out that she's not been seeing any clients recently. And it's interesting because Nate has still obviously not told her about his AVM diagnosis. And Nate asks Brenda if she's depressed, and she laughs and is like, yeah. That doesn't mean I want to talk about it. And Nate kisses her on the shoulder. But I feel like this is a huge indicator of how the rest of the season is going to go for Brenda's character. Also, I thought of this after I was done taking notes, and I wanted to remember to go back and add this in, but I forgot. But she had a line here where she said something along the lines of, if my life were a movie, I would just turn it off, or something like that. And it was something that I was watching and I was like, oh, okay, that's a very Brenda thing to say. But then I found myself thinking about it afterwards when I was just doing something else later. And I was like, oh, that was really deep. And I feel like I have been able to identify with that feeling of just being so not, I mean, that's kind of what depression feels like. You know what I mean? And I think the way that
especially she said she didn't want to talk about it. And
it was, I'll have to find it and post it on one of our social medias or something like that, because I really like that line. But it was just, yeah, Brenda's definitely not the same typical headstrong Brenda
as last season.
Right, that we met. And I think the catalyst of her going downhill was institutionalizing Billy. So.
And it's funny that she thinks that it's the car accident.
Yeah, she's like blaming it on that kind of.
Which means she's not even ready to acknowledge what it really is boiling down to.
Right.
I also loved that Brenda and Nate were having sex, but what I loved more in this scene was that she was open and strong enough to say, this just ain't working. And she just asks to stop. And so Nate does. She's like, it's just not going to happen. I don't know what the fuck is wrong with me. And Nate says, "You woke me up by going down on me." And I was thinking, this is just proof that consent is ongoing, even in relationships, meaning you can start a sexual experience with somebody and stop midway, and that's the end of it. Like, nobody's feelings have to be hurt. You can just be done.
Yeah.
And then I also have to say that I'm 99% positive that this is my favorite episode with Brenda doing the massage. Nate says in bed to her, "Sometimes you just got to force yourself to be active." Although he's talking about depression and probably being active with her body and outside of the bedroom. But I think this is foreshadowing for something else as far as activity. We'll find out later if I'm right or wrong.
You could still be right, though, because it's still, just because it doesn't happen in this episode doesn't mean it's not foreshadowing.
Right. I definitely think when that came up, but my brain was already thinking of it.
We've been waiting for that episode for so long when she gives the handy. This is it.
And I think you will see what the rest of my notes say.
I think this whole, like I said, this whole scene is a really good indicator of where Brenda's character is heading. And there's so many pieces you could liken to that, but I think that's another example too.
Mm-hmm.
So then at the Fishers, Rico and David are doing the intake for Rebecca with Rico's sister-in-law, Angelica. So Angelica is Vanessa's sister. Yes.
Oh.
I know that you hadn't known
that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay.
And she's like doing...
But also friends with Rebecca.
Yes, because they were both actresses. She's in the entertainment industry, because I think the only mention so far that we've had of Angelica was Rico. It was in the Vivica St. John episode when Rico said that Angelica did a cat food commercial.
Yep.
So they had all this cat food. So he used the cans of cat food to prop up Vivica's boobs. So she does like commercials. She's not a famous actress, but
that's how
she's
she knows
in
Rebecca.
this circle. Yeah. And also funny to think about too, knowing that she did a cat food commercial, and then this Becky character, the one who died, was in this big blockbuster film, and then Angelica was kind of talking shit about Becky this whole time, like, I don't want to pay anymore for her funeral, or like, she was so rude to me, she said in this episode. We'll get to those parts later on. So she was probably jealous of Becky, is my point, because she was way more successful than her.
Also ironic that they propped up Vivica's boobs with cat food, and her cat's the one that killed her.
Oh yeah, that's true too. I wonder if they buried her with the cat food.
Oh, good Lord. Okay, wow. Yeah, that's a lot.
Okay, so anyway, they're doing the intake with Angelica, who is also an aspiring actress, along with Rebecca's boyfriend, Brody. So here we also find out that they call her Becky, Rebecca, Becky. Her parents died when she was 2, and she was raised by her grandmother, who is also now dead. And Brody says she didn't really have anybody except us. Then Angelica shares that the cast of the movie is all chipping in to pay for Becky's funeral costs. And she also says they want a cheap service. Meanwhile, David gets a call from someone who David has answered a personal ad for. And he says, "I'm the fireman." And he makes plans with this guy to meet him for lunch. And Rico comes close to convincing Brody, because Brody is also very, very stereotypically stupid idiot vibes. And Rico's kind of finessing him. First, he says they don't want to bury her because she was afraid of the dark. And he's like, well, we could just do a casket and embalming for the service, and then we can cremate her, and you can scatter her ashes somewhere. And he's
we
like,
can keep the casket open the whole time.
Yeah.
I love that he was like
Playing with his stupidity.
Yes.
Fucking Angelica ruins it for him and is like, yeah, I think we can just actually skip the casket. So Angelica is clearly smarter than Brody, suggests they skip the casket, thwarting Rico's efforts at maximizing their profit with this. But
I did definitely catch on to that. I liked that Rico was taking the reins here to help.
Yeah.
And then it backfires, LOL. What a mess.
Yeah. And David walks in after this whole debacle went down between, like, they're haggling essentially. He's like, What did I miss? So then we see Claire at the beach with Gabe, and she asks him why he wasn't in school that day. And he says that he went and got high with Andy. She says she's worried about him. She's clearly upset, and he apologizes and swears that she doesn't need to worry about him. She also had a good line in here that I'm also remembering now. He was like, I was in school, I just wasn't in American history. Who needs it anyway? She was like, anyone who wants any idea of how the world works and wants any chance that making something of themselves or something like that. So I was just like,
which is also true, but honestly, like, also
I don't remember anything from
right. Claire's way ahead of us.
Yeah.
Like if somebody would have told my 16, 17-year-old that asked that, I would have been, they did. And I said, I don't fucking care.
I don't even believe, I'm not even really buying it that Claire actually thinks that. I think she's just so worried about Gabe. And when he's not where he's supposed to be.
Agreed.
Then she's latching onto that as a outlet. But that's not really why she was upset. I don't think, because we've seen her in school.
Or maybe
she was drawing
is, though.
skulls on her Scantron sheet and shit.
That's true.
So it's like, come on, girl. Like,
I think you're spot on. It's also very clear that Claire's intuition here with Gabe is spot on. Because remember, she doesn't know that how has that also never been talked about again? The gun thing?
The beer
that
cow?
should have been, that should have been headline news in the small town of LA.
I guess they missed it.
The fuck?
I know. It is kind of weird, but I guess, yeah, I mean, another example of how technology has advanced so much.
Yeah,
like,
if that happened today.
back in the late 90s, early 2000s, especially in LA, in a whatever grocery liquor store that there's a million of them, and think about the police, like they're not probably gonna spend their time chasing down. I mean, they did have video footage.
Right, and it was a gun. It wasn't like they just robbed. He robbed at gunpoint.
Maybe it comes back around. I think it actually might get mentioned again, but
okay. I'll feel better when that when that happens.
Yeah, so that happened. Then we really quickly see Nate getting an MRI, and then the scene cuts to a doctor saying, well, I have some very good news, which gets our hopes up for Nate, but it's just a fake out scene. And the doctor is telling David that he tested negative for HIV, still good news, but he does have gonorrhea and prescribes him Cipro. And then she calls him a bad boy.
Which was so weird.
It was funny. It was weird.
Yeah. All these doctors are fucking weird as hell.
Yeah.
Speaking of STD tests, I think, first of all, I don't have any STDs, but I have in the past. And I just want to normalize that and let people know that if that's you, you don't have to feel ashamed of yourself. You just take the precautions that you need to take. Let your partners know. And also still get tested even if you're with a partner, because you just never know what's going on. And so I get tested every time that
Or somebody could have something and not know it and have it for a long time.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
it doesn't always mean somebody cheated on you.
Yes.
You know?
I mean, definitely ask the questions.
So then Claire walks into the kitchen at home and Ruth is reading the book Now That You Know. And Claire asks what she's reading. And when Ruth tells her the book is called Now That You Know, Claire's like, now that you know what? And Ruth says that David is gay. And Claire says, oh, okay. So then Ruth starts asking her about it. She's like, you probably already knew about it, didn't you? And Claire's like, yeah. Ruth's asking her how she feels about it. She's trying to show that she wants to validate her feelings. And Claire says that she only cares about David being happy. And the look on Ruth's face was kind of like, that's my girl type of vibe, I felt like. But then she asks Claire if she's ever had any feelings of same-sex attraction and admits that she had a crush on Jane Fonda when she was Claire's age. And Claire says, well, she's single again, so now's your chance.
I love those one-liners.
Yes. Hilarious. And Ruth was just like, because she thought she was getting somewhere with Claire.
Yeah.
And then she just, and walks out. Super fucking funny. So Ruth's trying.
Yes, she's doing her homework. It's very bumpy. Like every time she opens her mouth, I'm like, what? Do you just want to borrow my sock and put it in there?
Like, how did you think this was going to go? But she is trying. And that's sometimes, you know what? We can't even fault her for it, because at least she could be so scared of what would happen that she doesn't even try.
Yes.
So she's trying.
Yep.
And we have to give it to her.
We have to give it to her.
So then David is at lunch with the fireman from the personal ad, and he shares with David that he never got into the whole promiscuous thing.
He's super fucking hot, by the way.
Super, super. He's a hunk. And he explains that he needs emotion behind it. And then David was kind of looking like, because he's been super promiscuous lately. But that was kind of where he was at before. But then he just went off the rails towards the middle and end of season 1, and the whole Vegas situation and whatnot. He has been promiscuous AF lately. But he was like, yeah, having sex just for the sake of having sex, what the heck is that about? And then the guy was like, Oh, no.
I
Like,
still
I
like
love
it.
having sex. I just want to like the person, you know?
How frustrating watching David right now. He's like a ping pong ball, just trying to bounce around and be what.
Just trying to do what the person, embody whatever the person says they want.
Yes. I'm sorry, keep going.
He's so lonely, which is what's driving it. But it is really sad because he has done this huge thing of coming out. He came out, like, and then he probably is feeling like, well, I thought everything was supposed to be so good after I came out and I was supposed to be accepted and whatever. But there's still so much for him to navigate that he's finding. And he still can't have Keith. And so I think he's really headed down a dark path.
And he doesn't have his deacon.
He's not the deacon. He left St. Bartholomew's, we find out, and went back to St. Stephen's, which we'll talk about later a little bit. But yeah, he's just feeling, I'm sure, super, super lost. And then this guy, he can totally see right through David. Another tidbit he shares is that his parents were never anything but 100% supportive of him, which was also just, obviously he wasn't trying to make David feel bad, but I feel like that was just, at the end of the day, it was adding insult to injury because this man ends up cutting this date off short and telling him, David asks if he wants to get together again. He says, no, I don't really feel a spark. We can't force it. And just leaves David sitting there, and he looks like super offended. But he was just being honest, and it was just obvious that David was contorting himself to be whatever this man said to make him appealing to this guy. And this guy just saw right through it. So I definitely did feel for David here, but it's very obvious why. I'm not surprised at all that that was the outcome.
Me neither. One of the things that stood out to me was that the fireman guy, was talking about how he needs to have this emotion behind the person that he's having sex with. And I was like, oh my God, he's demisexual.
I knew you were going to say that.
And I'm demisexual. And I was like, oh my God, I love this. Which means that you probably could still have sex to like do it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean.
It's not like you're driving force.
No. Visually appealing is a plus, but it's that emotional connection after you got to know them and realized that you love their brain and their personality and everything like that. And then I love that he just fucking got up and whatever. He loved the honesty.
Yeah, he didn't try to.
He wasted no time, bro.
He didn't try to sugarcoat anything. Just, this ain't gonna work, buddy.
I was dying.
So then we actually see Nate getting his real test results from the doctor, who tells him he definitely has AVM. And the doctor is an ass and super insensitive, and Nate progressively is getting more and more upset with him throughout the interaction. The doctor is sharing irrelevant personal stories. He's laughing. Nate's asking, what's next? And the doctor shares, all right, well, your options are cranial surgery, not a picnic, embolization, which involves injecting glue into your blood vessels, or we could use coils, and radiosurgery, which is focused radiation. And Nate just kind of freaks out. There's a fake out scene where he imagines himself like choking the doctor and then ends up calling him an arrogant piece of shit. And the doctor's like, well, I still want to get another MRI on you in 12 months. And he was just like, yeah, well, I'd like a fucking straight answer, asshole, and walks out. So
amen.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you thought that too, because I wasn't sure if I was overanalyzing this scene.
No, he was.
The demeanor was off.
Insensitive. It was just insensitive. That's the only word I can think. You're sharing
zero bedside manner.
Potential life-threatening diagnosis with somebody, and you're laughing.
It didn't even have to be a life-changing diagnosis. I once had a breast exam. The lady's feeling them around, and she goes, "Have they always been this lumpy?" And I'm like, I don't know. I look over at Rob. I'm like, have they? It was when I was first pregnant. And that same doctor, that was the first appointment for my very first pregnancy, actually. We looked for the ultrasound and we couldn't find the baby's heart. And she like, well, this does happen. It could be a I mean, it just that kind of stuff. I felt the same upset as the miscarriages I did about the lumpy boobs. Like, it was just so frustrating to watch that.
For sure. That sucked. And I feel like that is very common, unfortunately, to have interactions like that. I know there are wonderful doctors out there.
There are.
Digs at all to anyone in the healthcare profession, but just like in any profession, there are people who shouldn't be doing that. I have had bad experiences of just not feeling like they give a shit at all. And that sucks when you're getting your pelvic exams or your pap smear or whatever, because it's like you're literally have a scalpel tool inside my body, inside an orifice, and you're digging around down there and you don't give a flying fuck.
I had one time a guy had to do that for me, and he stuck his finger in my butt. And I was not, you got, literally, this was so.
Was he supposed to?
I don't remember. So I hope so. But he had a female nurse in there with him, and I went like this because I'm like, whoa, bro.
He didn't warn you?
You gonna spit on it first or what?
Ew.
And she puts my head back, and she's like, I need you to relax. And so then they wheel me. This is at like urgent care or something.
What?
They wheel me back to
Why are you having a child at this point?
Nope. It was I think I had something wrong with poop. Like I think I had blood in my poop or something. So they wheel me back to my ex-boyfriend at the time, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I look white in the face because I don't know what just happened. I have no idea.
How do they not
and he's
warn
like, what
you?
happened? And I just started crying.
Oh.
I felt so violated.
That's sad.
It was so sad, Chloe. I can't even explain it to you.
That's fucked up.
Then she literally put my head back down. I almost have tears thinking about it right now. It was so fucked up.
I can't believe they shoved a finger in your asshole without warning you. That's fun. I mean, now that you say it was for a poop thing, I get why they would have to do that. But like, you don't just. You gotta talk them through that.
Yes, I could have. Yes.
You know, I'm sure I've told you this before, but the most violating thing I can think of
At the doctor?
Yeah, is growing up in a small town, but having like people's parents that you know who are doctors shoving their fingers inside you.
Mm-hmm.
And then just having to see them at the grocery store like, oh, hey, Mr. blah, blah, blah. Like.
And did you know that when they do that stuff, they will jot down any scent? So they're like clearly smelling you too.
Dear Lord. And I mean, whatever. Just, okay, moving on.
I'm very open about that stuff now. But when that happened to me and when we're in high school.
Yeah.
Like
that's just, what the fuck? I don't know. And
it's traumatizing.
especially when you're so young and you don't know about autonomy and bodily boundaries. I'm not saying like, oh, we shouldn't have those types of medical exams, though obviously they're important for a reason, but like
we could be prepped a little bit better.
Like especially when you're children,
Mm-hmm.
like whatever.
Yeah. And nowadays they don't do pap smears until you're 25, I think. But they were just doing them at 14 in our hometown.
Yeah, it was like
here, give me some of your cervix.
In order to get like Gardasil, I think that you had to,
which was also a fucked up shot that we probably never should have got.
Yeah. I think, oh my gosh, there's
so much shit we never should have done.
The Depo-Provera
Yep,
shot.
I was on that too.
And have you seen the ads
with
for
the
that?
brain tumors?
Yeah. And I know so many people who are on that for so long.
I was on it for like 6 years.
That's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
That's fucked. And it's just like, oh, I'm listening to the radio and all of a sudden I hear
brain tumors.
If you took this medication, you might get a brain tumor. Just a heads up. Here's Chapel Rowan.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know how we got on that tangent.
Nate's
fucked up
doctor. Yeah. So we both hated him. Then Nate is driving home and Nathaniel's ghost is in the car with him, telling him how ironic it is that Nate is so healthy but still has this happen to him, his AVM. And Nate's still super pissed and he's honking and road raging and yelling fuck you to everyone. So clearly he's not okay.
No, I loved it. Was interesting that Nathaniel Sr. points out that about Nate being so healthy and how Nathaniel says that he smoked and drank and lived around embalming fluid and was quote unquote healthy. And if he never got into that car accident, he probably lived till he was 93. And Nate, who takes care of himself, runs every day, blah, 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 blah. It's literally what I said.
The running is actually probably
bad.
Yeah, he's not supposed to do
that. Go
fucking
figure.
Literally.
So it really just reinforces the idea behind you just don't know. And sometimes things like this happen.
I wonder if AVM is genetic. That would be interesting to look up. Maybe it was. Maybe Nathaniel had it too and no one ever found out about it. So then we see Brenda going through her stuff at her house. She's like throwing shit around, kind of. She's listening to rock music. She's smoking a joint. She's reading Nathaniel and Isabel. She's dancing. Personally, it looked like a good time to me. I'm like, that is my version of
Self-care.
Yeah, being at home alone and doing literally all of those things she was doing. But she was doing them in a depressed way, depressed, spirally way, which I've definitely been there before too. But it was just very clear that she is
not well.
Exactly.
Ruth at the family dinner table telling everybody that she's inviting Nikolai over today or tomorrow or whatever. He and I are having a sexual relationship right now. I'm not sure if it's going to last, but, well, there it is. And it's like the sock. I think it's the delivery that drives me nuts.
Yes. And it does make sense, though, why she's so bad at the delivery, because she's not used to communicating
any of them. Oh yeah, that's a good point.
You know,
yeah.
Like, so then she's like reading this book and she's trying so hard. And she does come out and say at the end of this episode that she's doing all of this for David. She's getting it all from this book she's reading. So the whole reason she invited Nikolai over was to like validate everybody's sexual relationships. Or
did she
partners.
want a fucking orgy? I'm surprised she didn't take everybody's keys and swap them up and have everyone grab a pair.
Right. Everybody was clearly on that same page. Like, it wasn't the right way to go about it. It didn't have the effect that she was hoping for. But she does have such an awkward delivery for all of this. But it just, once again, it's like, that was awkward as fuck. But at least it's better than saying nothing.
And she's consistent.
Yes. Like, she could just be, imagine how much worse it would be if she was just continuing to remain her old self and ignore everything all the time.
It would be a very boring show.
Yeah, and her relationship with her children would not grow at all.
On the plus side, too, it does seem like the kids are very receptive of Ruth's behavior, because I'm pretty sure they chuckled.
Oh, yeah, they think she's like wacko, but it could be taken a lot worse.
Yeah, they're playing along.
Yeah, I think so.
And so that is
sweet.
That is beautiful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they're all sitting down to dinner, and then Ruth says that, and she tells everybody that she wants them to bring their significant others because she's having a sexual relationship with Nikolai. And she tells Nate to invite Brenda, Claire to invite Gabriel Demas. They always call him Gabriel Demas, like first and last name, full name. And if David has a special friend, to invite them too.
Why is mine special?
Yes. And then David was offended by that. And what did she say after that? She was like, okay, are you having sex with anybody? Is that better? And he's like, not really. And then that's when they all burst out laughing at her and her word choice. And then she scolds them and tells them to stop acting like children. And then Nate gets up to go get an aspirin. And Ruth asks him if he has a headache, which...
Does she know about the brain scan?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I think that's just her personality. Why are you taking an aspirin? You have a headache. She's just...
Has to know everything.
Yeah. Control freak.
Yeah.
And then he says, no, he just read somewhere that it keeps your blood thinner if you take an aspirin a day. And David says, please, if our blood were any thinner, we'd evaporate. Then Ruth,
I don't understand that.
I think like thin blooded, think of like, oh, you're thick skinned, you're thick blooded, you're tough. So like thin blooded, thin skinned is like weak. And he's saying if our blood was any thinner, we'd evaporate. And this is coming from him and his perception of himself right now. Because remember, later we see he's feeling very inadequate. David is feeling inadequate right now. So it was kind of like a dig at himself. And he does actually say right after that, because Ruth gets pissed and is like, what's that supposed to mean? Our blood is thin. And then David says, oh, it's just a joke. I probably have the thinnest blood out of all of us or something. But I think, he was just saying, okay, think about Eddie and Keith, two macho, black, sexy men. And one of them is his ex that he's still in love with. And then he's got his white ass. And then we'll get to that part later on. But he thinks of himself as like a pussy-ass bitch, basically, a white man. And I'm pretty sure Ruth is Irish, and they're all Irish. So they're all pasty and whatever. But
no, it's coming together.
So then Ruth is pressing David on whether he's seeing anyone, and he eventually says no, and she asks why not. Sex is an important and healthy part of life. It's nothing to be ashamed of. David says, yes, I know that. Unfortunately, I'm not having any right now. And she says, what happened to that cop, the black man? And he says he met someone else. And this shuts her up. She definitely was not expecting him to say that. But also we see that Claire feels bad for David about this by the way she looks at him concerned, which was very sweet,
she knew too.
but also sad. She knew they broke up, but she didn't know
he was dating somebody else.
So then when Ruth forced him to say that, I bet she was just like, oh, fuck. You could see it was just like, oh.
Yeah.
So then Nate calls Brenda and is asking when he can see her, and she's sounding real fucked up on the phone, and we saw her just getting fucked up, so it makes sense. She says she has 3 shiatsu appointments the next day, but she's slurring, and I wrote here, I suspect she's also lying, but later we find out she was not lying. She really did have shiatsu appointments the next day. But Nate asks if she can still come for dinner on Sunday, and she says, oh, I think so, maybe. She's being kind of flaky. Nate tells her that he misses her, and she then eventually says, okay, I'll see you Sunday. But I feel so bad for Nate here because he clearly doesn't want to dump more on Brenda because she's obviously going through such a hard time herself because of the Billy situation, but he really needs her to be there for him right now.
Yep.
And he's so scared, and he just wants to be with her because she's his person, and it's just so sad. It was like all just coming together.
Anybody?
No, and he's carrying this all inside, all to himself, and my heart was breaking. And after he gets off the phone with Brenda, he walks into the prep room and sees Rico starting to work on Becky's corpse. And Rico asks Nate if he can drop her off at the crematorium that night because he's needed at home by Vanessa and the kids. And Nate just says he can't. He's like, I'm sorry. No, I can't.
Why did he say no?
I think he's just at his breaking point.
Okay, so he was setting a boundary.
That's what I got. Yeah. But
I was,
it was
wondering
like,
if I missed something.
He
thought about it.
Yeah, it was kind of weird, but that's the only thing that I can put together is that he's at his breaking point, and he just is so overwhelmed because we just saw him on the phone with Brenda, like, I really, really just want to be with you right now. And has no idea what's going on, and she's fucking off over there acting a fool. And then, yeah, he was like, no, I'm sorry, I just can't. So then Rico's clearly pissed, and then he asks Nate if he can at least help get her into the box, and then they start talking about her, and Nate's like, it's so sad, she was so young, and Rico's just being a dick, saying she threw her life away and it's pathetic. And Nate stares at her corpse after Rico walks away, just
probably contemplating.
Yeah.
We do have to touch on that quote of Rico here about Rebecca. Nate says, it's so sad, and Rico says, no, it's not sad. She threw her fucking life away, it's pathetic. And we can unpack it more, or we can stop right here, but why is this always the first thought about victims of drug overdose?
Because people are judgmental, and they don't consider all that goes into having an addiction and how it's a disease. And I mean, and that's not always how drug overdoses happen. Sometimes.
Right. We don't really know the whole history of Rebecca.
No. But
it very well could not have been an addiction. It also could have been laced.
Right.
It could have been a lot of things. She didn't intentionally try to throw her. I don't know. It hurt. It hurt me to hear that being said.
It definitely fits with Rico's character,
yes.
though.
Yep. I think I wanted to touch on that too.
Because so far we've seen him put himself above gay people and above gang, which some of these are like,
yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, the gang members. And it's like, obviously, like,
do we put ourselves above them though?
Right. We wouldn't have acted like that.
No.
That's just, Rico's a different breed when it comes to being judgmental. So then David is at church sitting in a pew, and he's at St. Stephen's, not St. Bartholomew's. And he's looking at the back of Keith and Eddie's heads, who are a few pews ahead of him. Then we see him having lunch with them afterward, explaining why he came back to St. Stephen's, and it was because he was kind of ostracized after his coming out in front of the congregation at St. Bartholomew's. And Eddie and Keith are literally silent when David says that he decided to come back to St. Stephen's. So I'm assuming that this brings up some major issues for them, essentially being told that they can expect to see David every week at church moving forward. Because remember when Keith and David were dating, there was a comment David made, I know Sundays have typically been our thing. So now Sundays are Eddie and Keith's thing.
Yep.
But now David's going to be there every week. And Eddie did not even look up from his food. And they just didn't make a peep when David said that, because obviously they don't want him to be coming to St. Stephen's, but they can't stop him. And David used to go there. So I fully support David going there.
And they've probably fucked up by bringing him out for lunch, because now David's going to think this is a natural occurrence every weekend. It probably wouldn't have been as bad had they not went to lunch after.
Yeah. I think no matter when they realized that he was going to be there every week,
it would have stung.
I think that it's just like probably a jealous thing. I kind of understand it, but it's like, what are you going to do? It's just a weird thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, David asks how they've been after a little awkward silence, and Eddie shares that they've had a wonderful weekend in San Diego, yada, yada, yada. Poor David. There's a quick scene where we see David standing in a lineup with Keith and Eddie for Mr. Gay Black America, and they all have sashes on, and Keith says Mr. Gay Black Cop, and Eddie says Mr. Gay Black EMT, and then David says Mr. White Ass Cracker. So clearly showing that David is feeling inadequate in this moment, because they had just been talking about all these adventurous things that they've been doing together, like hang gliding, etc. Eddie and Keith had. And then Keith tells David that he's moving to a new unit in his same building that's bigger so that they can get a dog. And David pretends to be happy for them and says, great.
So did we get the idea that they're moving in together?
I kind of got that idea, but I don't know for sure.
And I can't remember.
He said, we want to get a dog, but that could mean like, I get a dog that's ours. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah. I thought that what was happening could be beautiful.
Yeah.
But the intentions are clearly all over the place.
Yeah. Yes. All over the place is a good way to say it. Because I do think that, I don't think there's any cruel intentions upon anybody. But I do think that them inviting David out to lunch with them was obligatory. I think it probably wasn't, like, if you would have had Eddie alone and been like, you can be honest, do you really want to go get lunch with David? He would have said no. But he's doing it to be nice and to be a good partner for Keith. And Keith is kind of doing it, like, I'm sure there's an element. It looked like
they were laughing and having fun in the beginning, too.
Yeah. And I mean, I think they're trying, because it's not awkward. I think they're all trying to make the best out of an awkward situation. But it's like,
that is all uncomfortable.
Yeah. And it's no one's fault, really. Like, at this point, nobody's really in the wrong. It's just, and imagine, it's got to be really hard for Keith, too, because Keith, like, is going to be having this insecure partner now, because...
And I don't blame him.
No.
I would love for Eddie to not be insecure about any of this stuff. Because I really trust Keith. It's
not even necessarily about the trust, though. Like, if I imagine myself in that position, even if I 100% trusted my partner, I would still be like, this sucks. Because this was like a happy day for us every week. But now I have to pretend to not feel weird when I'm definitely going to feel weird and I can't help it.
And you're sharing it with your partner's ex-boyfriend.
Yeah. And it just depends, too. Like, they're so recent.
Yeah. And there's feelings there. Right. I think that is really what is the tough part of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then we find out Brenda was not lying. Mm-hmm. She is performing shiatsu on a client quite aggressively. And he is quite annoying. And they start to bicker. And Brenda eventually tells him to get the fuck out of her house. He calls her a crazy bitch and tells her to finish his massage, and then she tells him that she doesn't need his money, and if he doesn't get the fuck out of her house right now, she will call the LA Times and tell them about the lipo scars on his ass. He's like a famous author or something, it sounded like. And I just said, go girl, this is why we love Brenda.
In the beginning of this, had typed, yes, this is the episode. Just kidding. It's not. I actually, even after that, I thought, it still might be.
We have been waiting since the first episode to get to the episode where Brenda.
It's in this season. I'm almost positive of it.
Yes, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the next episode, although we've said that before. But there are things that happen, and I feel like that might be a catalyst. But
to something. I do remember it being something.
She really
progressively moving things. Yeah. But hold on, I want to talk about quick. I love this for her. setting her own boundaries, even within her workplace. I can speak to that as an independent business owner that works directly with clients. I have had to fire clients before. I've never done it as vigorously as Brenda.
Fire clients. I've never heard that term. That makes
Yep,
sense,
that's
though.
what it's called. And Brenda just fired him and literally said, get the fuck out of here. And I did not have her demeanor, although there are definitely clients that I wish that I would have. But I was just very nice about it, you know. But that's a hard thing to do. I know Brenda's not thinking clearly, and it probably was easier for her.
Yeah.
But it's also sucks. I love every single one of my clients, but I wouldn't want to be working with a client that I don't like.
Yeah. And especially in your house.
In your house.
And like rubbing all over their body.
And his line, get back over here and give me my massage.
Yeah.
I was like, no, done with
Yeah.
you. That was the end of it.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what pissed her off so bad.
He kept talking about millions and
He was like, saying how poor people are so miserable and or something.
let's be
like
real.
that.
I don't even think she was listening to him. I think whoever was on her table, if they had anything negative to say, she was going to give him the works.
Yeah, it's the scene started out where she was like already being super aggressive with her massage on him, like pissed kind of. But also he was just like talking. So it's like chicken or the egg situation. We don't know what came first. But yeah,
Something.
obviously it didn't end well for him.
It wasn't the happy ending I thought it was.
No. Soon. Then super quick, like 5-second scene, we see Nate grabbing an aspirin
Another one.
out of the cabinet.
So now it was 2 chances to grab the ecstasy.
Yes. And it must have been this one because this is where I think we're seeing that it's
The dinner.
Sunday when everyone's coming over
Because
for
he
dinner.
would have had,
It would have hit him
obviously.
before.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I
he's
missed
grabbing
that second
another
one.
aspirin. But it's funny how they're dangling the aspirin in front of us because it's like,
That's the third person that we've thought almost took it.
If you remember that, like when you're watching these episodes, it's like every time someone like goes to grab an aspirin and they're always in that cabinet. Like one of the Fishers is always in that cabinet grabbing something and we're just waiting for
It to happen.
Yes.
Who's going to be the next on taking their clothes
and
off?
also, we didn't even know. I kind of thought that when Ruth took the stray type of ecstasy, that was the only stray type of ecstasy. We didn't really know that there was more in there. So then it's Sunday, and Claire and Gabe are downstairs before dinner, and Claire is showing Gabe the prep room, and Gabe starts to poke around and look at the chemicals, look in the
I thought
cabinet.
he was like stealing shit.
Red flag. And Claire talks about the screws that they put in orifices so that people don't leak. And then
I did not know that either.
until this,
Yes.
for real.
Yes.
I don't know how.
So they put it in the butt?
Yeah, like there's this girl that I follow, or I don't even think I follow her, but she pops up a lot for me on.
You probably watched it long enough.
Yeah,
Like, we got to
the
send her more of these.
algorithm.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what her handle is. If I think of it, I'll put it in like the episode description or something. But it's this blonde woman, and
She does autopsies?
yeah. And she always makes videos about like she's a mom and what she will never let her kids do because she's a autopsy technician. And she says all these things that she's seen kids die from, which is so
Send me the
sad.
thing.
But she also does like kind of other content where she just talks about doing autopsies. And she like, I'm pretty sure there's a video where she like showed one of the screws. It's like a butt plug, but like a screw with like a sharp pointy end they put in your butt so you don't leak, like they don't seep, like the guy in the one episode where Nate let him seep. But yeah.
Oh, yeah, in the back of the van.
Yeah. But yeah, they put that in your bum and
And your vagina.
in your vag.
Probably in your urethra.
I don't know. I don't know. And they probably have to put like cotton up your nose and in your ears and stuff. Like all of or they also put weird things on your eyes so they stay closed. Like there's hooks that they put under your eyelids.
I think I did know that.
Which is so fucked. But
Whatever.
like you're going to so much trouble. Jesus Christ, just why?
And they only do this when you're doing a casket. Because if you're going to
Yeah.
be cremated, they don't need to put.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, okay. So anyway, Claire's telling Gabe about all this fun stuff. And then Gabe says, so this is where my brother was. And then Claire starts apologizing and saying sorry. She shouldn't have brought him down there. And Gabe says it's okay. He's the one who asked to see it. And then he gives her a kiss.
What were his real intentions?
We will find out.
Oh, my fucking God. Not in this episode.
I remember though. So then next we see Claire and Gabe sitting on the couch with Nikolai, which was a hilarious scene. And David is sitting in the chair across from them. And everyone is silent. It is so awkward and funny. And Nikolai breaks the silence and says, your mother is a good woman. And David says, yes, we're aware of that. And then Claire says, David, give him a break. I'm sorry. You'll have to excuse my brother. He's been majorly cranky ever since he stopped getting laid. And I think that actually it looked like it hurt David. And I kind of felt bad because the look on his face was just like, because Claire is usually defending David.
Yeah.
So I felt like he was just like, oh, damn, ouch.
Yeah, that was kind of out of character.
But I get it, though, because Claire was like, she doesn't like injustice. And she felt bad for Nikolai.
Hey, that's so true.
So she like kind of came to his defense because he didn't, in her eyes, she didn't think he deserved to be treated so rudely.
Yeah.
But it just so happened to be David that was the one that was being rude to him. So he took the brunt of her.
I love that. That shows a lot about her
Yeah.
morals too.
I think that's probably like where it was coming from. But then she says that to Nikolai. And then Nikolai asks David how old he is. David says he's 31. And then he tells him that he had a son a little older than David, and he was a student of medicine. And then you can see David process that information and start to see Nikolai is more of a human.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, I did.
yeah. The look.
But where the fuck is his son now?
I know. I don't know. But
I had a son. Is he dead?
I get the vibe that Nikolai might be like some kind of refugee or something. I don't know. I don't know if that's a thing. He's Russian. I literally have no idea.
Huh.
I hope we find out more about his son. But yeah, David's look, it was another perfect Michael C. Hall facial expression moment. But it was like his eyes dropped and he kind of looked down and he was just like, oh. Like it was just, you could tell he was processing like, oh, you're a human and you have a child. And where is he? There's whatever.
That is a very humanizing
humanizing
thing to say.
So then Nate walks in with Brenda and he's acting a little strange. So everyone sits down to dinner at the table and Nate announces that he has major cotton mouth. Okay. Everyone's confused. Nikolai says grace. It's pretty intense. At the end, he goes, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. Lord bless, oh Lord Jesus Christ,
It kept
Son
going.
of God, have mercy on us, amen. And Gabe is sitting there like, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and all the pictures are just looking around like, what the fuck? And this whole time, Nate is looking at Nikolai like, just in love. It was such a good scene. This scene makes this episode.
Yeah.
Truly. And
I agree.
Then Nate is looking at Nikolai admiringly and tells him that he's so beautiful. And Nikolai doesn't think anything of it. He just says, thank you. And he says, you are such a beautiful person. There is this total light coming out of you. And everyone is starting to look around like, what the fuck is going on? And then David asks Nate if he's all right as Nate overfills his wine glass and slurps from it. Then Brenda starts giggling. She can't contain herself. And then Nate starts literally groping her, like grabbing her boob and just like all over her like tummy and chest and hair.
Because it probably felt so nice.
Yes. And then she's like, babe, like, whoa. And she stops him.
I think Gabe said something too, didn't he? He was like, I think your brother's on drugs.
Yeah. And then Brenda was like, look, and they're like, he's like this close to her. And so she like grabs his chin and looks in his eyes.
The pupils.
Like, you're fucking high.
It was so cute.
Or Nate, you're high. And he's like, no, I'm not. Am I? And then everyone's like, Claire and Gabe are laughing at this point. And then Brenda tells him to look at the light. And then he looks at the light and he goes, oh my God, I am high. And Gabe bursts out into laughter here. Ruth is looking around trying to figure out what Nate is looking at, what light he's seeing. And
She should remember what what the roller coaster of this is like.
Oh, it was at nighttime though, so she didn't see any light. So
True that.
But and that Ruth still doesn't know that she took ecstasy.
That's a good point.
She thinks it was going camping. That's
she
hilarious.
thinks it was a dream.
Yes. And then Nikolai asks Ruth, what is he high on? And Ruth says she doesn't know. And Nate says, I am so not hungry. So literally.
It was a lot of chaos.
Top tier scene. Yep.
My favorite from this whole episode, though, or this whole scene is when after Nate's compliment, like literally what the fuck is going on?
This total light coming out of
That's
you.
what it was. And this is all Ruth said. That's such an unusual compliment.
Yes.
I LOL'd so hard. I was like, and that is such an unusual thing to say about an unusual compliment.
Yes.
But she had this big smile on her face.
It was like when she said, oh, so you stick your thumbs in people. to
Yes,
Brenda.
yes.
Like, what? Okay.
It's so innocent and like endearing.
Yeah.
Oh, I died.
So cute. So
And I also loved the wine of him.
yeah, he's like
slurping
it. And oh my God, it was so funny. And it was.
And time out. I loved Nikolai the whole time.
Yes. This was all normal to him. He was totally.
Bad an eye. He's like, can you pass the bread?
Yeah, literally. And then we'll get to this part, but later on, he was just like, what? I think it was great.
Yeah.
Fine. But I also loved about that part how Brenda was laughing and he's like, hi, but he's like, yes, I haven't heard you laugh in so long. And it was a really sweet, because Brenda has just been totally fucked since all of this.
Weird. What a good time. I love this writing.
Yeah.
This was perfect timing for him to get fucked up.
It was.
One more other thing to talk about quick. If that were you, if you were Nate and this happened,
that would be so scary.
I would freak the fuck out. I would end up in the emergency room. Wouldn't you?
I don't know what I would do.
He's so calm about it.
And
like enjoying it.
Well, because I mean, if you don't take like too much, that's the intended effect, is to like feel really good. So all of a sudden you're just feeling really good, but it's like, oh my God.
Where did I get the drugs from though?
Yeah.
But I guess they'd find out
later. He doesn't seem too overly concerned about it.
I would have been very concerned.
Right. I don't know what I would do in that situation, to be honest with you. It all depends on the setting, but yeah. So then we see Ruth and Nikolai in the kitchen after dinner as Ruth is cleaning up and Nikolai's sitting at the table having a shot of vodka. He has the whole bottle of vodka out with a shot glass.
So Russian.
Typical. Also typical
Mother
that
Russia.
Ruth is cleaning and Nikolai's just sitting there.
Don't even get me started.
I know. We don't even need to go down that path, but I just had to note it. But yes, very Russian too. And then Nikolai says, what? I think it went well.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
No, it is very endearing. And then Ruth says, what are you talking about? It was awkward and embarrassing. And then they look over at Nate doing like Tai Chi or some shit in the living room, like through their little window that they have. And then she looks at Nikolai and Nikolai is just completely unperturbed. And he says something like, he seems happy. Like what? He just seems happy. What's the problem? Ruth is totally scandalized. And then Claire and Gabe announce that they're going to the movies. Then Nate is telling Brenda and David in the other room about flowing. He's like, it's all everything in my life, everything, this thing in my head, it's all about flow. And he's going like, and they're just sitting on the couch literally looking at him like, okay. And then David says, uh-huh. And Nate freaks out and he's like, oh my God, that was so totally David. That was so you. I love you so much. Like he's just
I really
still
liked
rolling.
that though too. Though.
Yeah, it was sweet. It was cute. Like I do love high Nate. And then Brenda announces she's leaving and David says that she has to take Nate with her. She laughs and says, not when he's like this. And then Nate says, did you know that I taught David how to masturbate? Because he said something before that, like, oh man, I hope I didn't fuck you up when we were kids. Brenda, did you know that I taught David how to masturbate? And David was just like, what the fuck? And Brenda bursts out laughing and
Reinforces her idea that she's not taking Nate
yes,
with her.
she's just like, you're so fucking high. And he says goodbye to Brenda. He hugs her, tells her he loves her so fucking much. She says, you're so fucking high. And then Nate says, yeah, but how did I get that way? I didn't take any drugs. And then David interjects and asks if he took any aspirin and guiltily admits that there may have been a stray tab of ecstasy in the aspirin bottle in the kitchen. They all laugh and Brenda leaves. And then Nate tells David that it's really important to him that he likes Brenda. And David says, I do like her. We knew it because during the trip, the Vegas episode, we were like, I think David does like Brenda, though. And we were so right because he admitted it. I think he really appreciates her non-judgmental vibes.
I loved that scene, too, because it seems like we haven't really gotten the confirmation, or we don't really get to see the importance of Brenda and Nate's relationship to the rest of the Fishers.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a missed opportunity, I think, for the writing, because, and maybe
we kind of see how Ruth feels about her, or like get vibes.
Yeah, that's true.
And we know Claire
I know, but it just
doesn't
seem as like we could have had more of that.
Yeah.
So I loved that conversation happened.
I do too.
It like solidified a lot of things.
I agree with you. It would be interesting to see her interact more with the Fishers, and we do eventually, but I think that's also just part of her character because she's so not attached to like Nate or his family. So it's like, why would she spend time with them? Because she doesn't really care. And it's like, I don't know. But so that was that. And then, of course, Gabe and Claire are at the movie of the death scene character that she starred in. And they realize that it's the girl that they had in the prep room back at the Fishers.
How did they not know that? I was so confused.
Yeah, it was kind of weird because it's like, wouldn't it be like big news that this woman had died? And I mean, maybe it was and they just didn't show that, but they didn't mention it. So
I'm not also going to throw out here, did they see her dead body?
I don't think so. I don't know if Gabe did. Like Claire might have before, or maybe they were just talking about. Like saw like her picture and stuff from having.
That would make more sense. Yeah.
But there's also a cute moment here when Gabe covers Claire's eyes at a scary part. They were talking and it was a slasher, and he just like puts his hand up, and I was just like, that's sweet. Okay, so this is a weird fucking scene. Nate is riding out his high watching TV on the couch, flipping through the channels and watching silly things when he hears a laugh and strange music coming from down the hall and goes to investigate. He approaches the closed door at the end of the hallway and opens it to find Nathaniel Sr. sitting at a table with Life and Death. So Life is a large Caribbean type woman she's got like a tropical drink and whatever. And Death is a businessman type dude. And I have to say the aesthetics in this scene are amazing. Mm-hmm. Like the vibes, they have the plant placements in the background, and everything in this room was just like perfectly done. But then they're playing Chinese checkers, Life and Death and Nathaniel at this table. And Nathaniel introduces Nate to Death, who offers him a smoke. And Death introduces Nate to Life, the woman. And he says, let's just say it's a mutually beneficial arrangement. Because Nate's like, wait, you guys know each other? Like, and then Nate sits down to play the game with them. And Nathaniel tells him not to make Death mad. He said, like, oh, I'm so scared. And Nathaniel's like, oh, no, like, don't piss him off. And then Death is like, oh, I don't get mad. I have people who do it for me. And then he starts laughing this, like, demonic laugh. And then Life is like, climbs on top of Death and starts fucking him. And it was just bizarre. She just like climbed on top of him in the chair and they start fucking. And they're yelling and moaning. He's like sticking his head in her tits. And then Nate and Nathaniel are just watching. And Nathaniel says, big cosmic mystery right here, right in front of you. Can't say your old man never took you anyplace interesting. All that lives, lives forever. Only the shell, the perishable, passes away. The spirit is without end, eternal, deathless. And then Nate wakes up on the couch and writes down his dream. So Nathaniel said all of that to Nate while he was like kind of stroking his head, and Nate was just leaning on the back of the chair watching Life and Death fuck. And This scene was wild.
Yeah. It was a lot to take in. I'm surprised that Nate being on ecstasy could even comprehend what was going on, because I had troubles.
But
even
it
like
was
you were
his
saying, the
it was his
aesthetics.
dream, but
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The aesthetics were on point, to the point where I was starting to get confused myself of like, what's going on? It was a lot.
I remember, this was another scene that I remember watching for the first time ever when I first watched back in 2015 and just being like, whoa.
What did I just watch?
Yeah, literally. It's one of those. Like, what the fuck did I just watch?
Well, it was very well done.
Yeah, very creative. But it was just out of left field. Like,
I'm not quite sure what it means to Nate. Like, I don't understand the comparison of, I think what I can conclude is that Nate has death on his mind for sure. And he's clearly worried about it.
Right. And they're playing a game and he has to, like, Nathaniel's like, you got to put something in the kitten or something. Like, you have to make a bet. And, like, are you in or out? And Nate's like, all right, I'm in. So he's, like, playing, I don't know. It's some kind of analogy or metaphor of him, like, playing a game with life and death. And
if he makes the wrong decision, I bet you it has to do with...
that's what it is. I think we just said what it is. We just needed to talk through it.
Yeah. So he had all these decisions that he didn't like any of them. And if he fucking makes the wrong one...
He's gambling with his life.
Yes.
Essentially.
But he wasn't getting as much confirmation from the doctor. Because remember in the beginning, he's like, so if I wouldn't have gotten in this car crash and had a routine brain scan, but now this is like his chance. So he's getting his chance to play the checkers because he got in the car accident. And now he gets to decide the fate.
I had such a long form fucked up moment in my head. I wish that we could talk about everything that happens in the whole show right now, because I just made the biggest connection that
You mean later in the series?
Yeah. But okay, I'll kind of try to like...
No, don't. Okay, do.
I won't like ruin anything.
Don't ruin it for me.
Just think, I won't give any spoilers, but think about what you have in your brain, whatever it is. Maybe it will lead you to the same, oh my God, or maybe it won't, and I won't tell you if it doesn't. But think about Nate and Brenda's relationship throughout the entire series, how it goes, all the ups and downs, and what happens with Nate at the end of the series, and different characters that come in to Nate's life later in the series. And think about the fact that he would have never found out about his AVM if it wasn't for Brenda crashing the car. So basically, like, in a weird way, she
saved his life.
She is the reason that because he then decides to do what he decides to do about his AVM situation.
Which I actually don't remember what he did. Right. You do, I can tell.
Yes. And it doesn't really matter. And it's not something I can say for sure, but I guess what I'm thinking in my head is that I think that Brenda essentially prolonged Nate's life inadvertently, obviously, like, not on purpose. But if it wasn't for her crashing that car, he never would have found out about his AVM. So then he never would have taken any action to address it. And he could have dropped dead
on his next run.
Exactly. And then as we go through the series and we see how everything transpires between them, it's actually just so sad and fucked up. But anyway.
We'll have to come back to this thought then.
For sure.
I can't believe that we just had to talk about that, though, because I remember watching this and I just couldn't. I think I was so focused on trying to figure it out that I didn't step back enough to just look at it. That's my vacuum cleaner.
Oh, okay.
It's on a schedule. I was like too focused into it, and where I wasn't able to step back and just
the life and death scene.
Yeah.
And then when we just said that out loud, I'm like, oh yeah, he's just playing a game with life and death. Oh, he's gambling with life and death. Yeah, literally. And yeah, I think that's basically what they're trying to show us. And the way that he's gambling with it is like, oh, he just told the doctor he's gonna fuck off and do nothing about it. But then it's like Nathaniel coming in and saying, are you sure you want to do that? Because that's really gambling with your life if you just don't do anything about this. But also, you're in the game now because you know about it.
Yep.
Oh, wow. That's deep. Okay. So, but there's also, we'll come back to that whole quote of Nathaniel's later. Yeah. I did some digging on that. It's kind of interesting. So, David calls Keith. And
what time was this, by the way?
early in the morning.
Okay, but like 4 o'clock in the morning or 7:30?
I don't know. My best guess would be like 5 a.m. or something because, or 5:30 or 6 a.m. I don't know because then Ruth walks in after to talk to David.
Before you really should call somebody.
Yeah. Well, because so David calls Keith, but Keith and Eddie are both still asleep. And he's like, I hope I didn't wake you up. And Keith's like, well, yeah, you did. But anyway, he calls and he thanks Keith for inviting him out with him and Eddie after church. And he also tells him that it's really important to him that they've remained friends and he'd like to spend time with him alone sometimes. And Keith tells David that he's in a relationship and that's not going to happen. David says, yeah, I know that. It's just kind of hard for me to be around you and Eddie together, which was brave of him to say. But Keith's like, yeah, well, you need to get over that. And David says, Jesus, Keith, could you be a little more self-righteous? And then hangs up on him. So obviously, like, Keith's setting a boundary. David's pretty much in the wrong here, although I do commend him for sharing his feelings.
Yeah, he just needs to listen to what he just said.
Yeah.
If he could have recorded himself and then played it back when he wasn't in his feelings, he would have realized, hopefully, that was a weird request to ask.
Right. It's crossing a line.
Mm-hmm.
It's crossing a line. And I think ultimately, okay, like, I don't know. I can kind of get behind him saying it because ultimately at the end of the day, it's up to Keith to protect his relationship with Eddie or decide he wants to be with David if that's what he decides. But what if in that moment Keith would have said, he
come over,
like got the confirmation he needed and then was just like, you know what, I really do want to be with David, and then broke up with Eddie, and David and Keith lived happily ever after, and David would have never found out if he didn't say what was on his mind.
Yeah. I mean, now Keith knows.
Yeah.
So that's something that came out of it.
Anyway.
So we know now that Keith knows that David still has feelings. And I think that's a really big moment.
Mm-hmm.
And now we know that.
You could argue that David could still say, like, no, it's not that I have feelings for you. I just want to spend time with you alone. But obviously, yeah. He knows. But David didn't explicitly say, I still have feelings for you. He just said he wanted to spend time with him alone. But he still knows what that means. And he's setting that boundary.
And I think that that's going to live in the back of Keith's mind now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which also is not super fair to Keith if that's not what he wants. So maybe I disagree with what I just said. I don't know.
It's a weird little love triangle.
It's hard.
I also feel bad for Eddie.
I do. But if you're in a relationship with someone, your relationship is nothing if you can't trust that they will do what Keith did and set a boundary if somebody privately tells them, hey, I want to hang out with you alone. So
do you want to know what I love about this?
What?
I guess we don't know for sure what happened when Keith and Eddie went home. But I love that Keith set the boundary without consulting Eddie.
Yeah. He just was like, knew that wasn't going to fly.
Yeah. And the fact that, I guess I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to put myself in Eddie's shoes for a second. And the fact that Eddie didn't have to say, Keith, this is weird. And I guess we don't know
I'm not comfortable with this.
That Keith just had the awareness.
I think he does. I think he said no out of respect for Eddie and for his relationship with Eddie. But that's like what I'm saying. If someone who's not secure in their relationship would say, no, that's so fucked up. Like, David should have never said that to Keith, and Keith should go and tell Eddie right away. But really, like, if you're secure...
Eddie doesn't need to know.
No. If you're secure in your relationship, you can trust that your significant other will do what Keith did and say no if propositioned like he was by David. And if you can't trust that your partner will do that, then you don't have the solid foundation that you need in your relationship.
There's more to unpack then.
Yeah.
Also, Eddie doesn't need to know this, I don't think, because I think Keith is very square on point right now.
Yeah.
But how good would that feel for Eddie to know?
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Yeah. That he shot him down.
Yeah.
For sure. I agree.
And another missed opportunity, but not really much you can do about it because then it takes away the magic of it. Right.
And maybe we find out more about it. I don't remember if we ever circle back to that situation.
Okay.
But I'm so excited to continue. I'm like really invested in Keith and David's back and forth right now.
Yes.
Because we're paying so much attention to it. And it's like, ooh.
There's very much true love there.
For sure. So then Ruth walks into the kitchen after David hung up on the phone with Keith. And David asks her where Nikolai is. And he tells her that it would be her right to have him stay the night if she wanted to. And she says, I know, I don't need your permission. And then David says, and I don't need yours. So then they talk about the night before, and David admits to having a bad time. Ruth's like, you had a horrible time, didn't you? And David's like, yeah, kind of. And Ruth explains that she did it all for him because some stupid book she was reading told her to. And David's like, well, throw that book away. And she says, I intend to. And then she asks about Nate having a problem with drugs. And David is like,
oh, geez.
I think he took it by accident. And Ruth's like, how do you take drugs on accident? And David is just like,
Okay, so funny now that you're saying that out loud because Ruth took it by accident too.
Oh my God, you're right. You're right. I didn't even put that together. That's hilarious. And David knows that. David knows that Ruth took it on accident and doesn't even know that she took it.
Does he know?
Yeah, because remember, she came home the next day and she was like,
oh, I just took an aspirin and it went away.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was wonderful.
Yeah.
You should have seen the stars. So funny. It also speaks kind of to David's like waffling integrity here, because he kind of was being shady by telling Keith that he wants to
see
hang
him
out with him
alone.
alone. And now he's in a way kind of being shady by
With
letting Ruth think that she doesn't even know she took drugs, but that Nate, he's not owning up to the fact that it's his fault that David put the ecstasy in there.
It was a perfect opportunity. I think they set us up on that too, to prove that he's losing his
integrity.
Yeah, because he absolutely could have said something then. Huh.
And Ruth probably would have literally, what is she going to do about it? But he just chose the path of least resistance, which really, whatever. But the right thing to do would have been to fess up. So anyway, we're at Becky's service now, and Claire and Gabe are in attendance. And Claire says it's boring, and Gabe says it's hilarious. And Claire kind of looks at him, and she's like, Gabe, a girl died. And he's like, so what? Everyone dies. Then we see Nate talking to David about the ecstasy, and he thinks it was Claire who left it in the bottle, but David admits that it was him. At least he's doing the right thing here. But then Nate asks him if he can get some more, which was hilarious.
I loved it.
Funny because he started all pissed off, like, what? Is that some kind of joke? Like, Claire thinks, well, that's funny to put ecstasy in the aspirin bottle.
So this is a sexist move on my part.
Sexist.
It's okay for David to put the X in the aspirin, but not Claire.
Oh, I read it differently. I thought that Nate was trying to make it seem to David like he was so mad about this ecstasy. And then once he found out more info about Claire or whatever, like anything he could get from David, he was going to go run to Claire and be like, hey, can you get me some more ecstasy?
Really? Okay, I didn't get that part.
But I could be wrong.
I was in my man-hating moment at that moment.
And also even it could just be like age. She's a teenager, so he automatically thought it was
and his
her.
younger sister too, but yeah, I don't know. I just threw that in there to be a jackass.
Yeah, no, I love it. So then Brody, Becky's boyfriend, gets up to give his eulogy or whatever for Becky, and he starts singing this horrible song that he wrote for her, and everyone, the camera pans to like Claire and Gabe and it was Gabe had gotten up, but Claire's laughing, Rico's trying to keep a straight face, David and Nate are like giggling in the back, and he's singing a song. He's not a good singer. The words are weird. He's like,
there's no music.
Something about like, you're like a bunny and bees or something, and then candle, but you're still in the air like smoke or something. Your candle was blown out.
So weird.
It was just bizarre and fucking weird.
It gave me a flashback for something that happened to me.
Oh, God.
My dad and my stepmom renewed their 10-year anniversary vows when I was still dating Nick. So this had to have been 2012, maybe.
Okay.
They did this in Vegas.
Oh, okay.
And it was just a group of us, like my brothers and sisters, my stepbrother and stepsister too. And she asked me to secretly learn this song and sing it for them to like, as a gift for my dad. And I'm a singer. And I had never heard this song in my motherfucking life.
Oh, God, what was this song?
I can't remember.
You can't? I'm dying to know. I need
They
to
have
know.
it on recording. So just hold on.
We gotta post it now.
I don't know, man. It's so bad. So I had spent like 2 months trying to learn this song, and I didn't know it. Let me just tell you
know
that.
the words?
I didn't know the words. I didn't know the notes. So we're at the fucking service, and here's sure as shit, this song comes on. I'm drunk because we're in Vegas. So, and my poor dad, he has Parkinson's, and he's just like frailish, but just so loving. He's just got love in his eyes, and he's looking at me all excited because he hears the song, and Lynn like moves him to look at me, and so it's just me singing to my dad, and I just start making up the notes, and at some point I even went as far as thinking I could hit this high note, so I like
Oh my
bolted it
gosh.
out. It's so bad. And I literally was watching that guy sing, and I was like, this is like me in Vegas.
I need to see that. Even if we don't post it, I need to see that. That's
I'll
hilarious.
see if I can have them send it to me.
Did
It's on
they
it.
ever
They put
say
it on
anything to you after about it?
Nobody did, which
Okay.
also makes me think sometimes that I'm actually not a good singer. And they've just been lying to
You
me.
are. I've heard you sing, but I can totally see that happening.
It was
That's
so bad.
hilarious. But what about Nick? Did he say anything? Or, like,
I
did you
can't
guys talk
remember.
about it?
I can't remember. I think I blocked most of it out. And to be fair, most of us were probably drinking, but
Yeah.
they watch it every year.
That's hilarious. Okay. So Claire gets up to go find Gabe because he had stormed off. He was like, everyone dies, blah, blah, blah. And he's down in the prep room. And Claire asks him what he's doing down there. And Gabe kind of plays it off like he's sad and it was a bad idea for him
You
to
could
go
tell
to a
he was-
funeral. Up to no good.
Yes.
And Claire asks him if he's okay. And he freaks out on her. And he's like, I'm not your pet. I'm going home. So obviously deflecting. And it's so obvious because this same exact scenario just happened a couple days ago when they were down there. And Claire asked him if he was okay. And he was like, yeah, and gave her a kiss and hug and everything. But now this time, all of a sudden, he's just so pissed off. And, I'm not your pet. I'm going
Because
home.
he found what he needed down there, and he wanted to get it home before.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also not even sure what's going on. I just know that something like that happened.
I remember, and it's fucked. But yeah, I wrote that. I know what's going on here, and I hate it so much.
Do we find out soon?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
It should be, at least if it's not in the next episode, it'll be the next couple ones. But so then Rico is arguing upstairs with Angelica about coming up with the difference for the cost for Becky's funeral. And we find out here that Angelica has been giving Vanessa money on the down low to pay for diapers and stuff. And Rico is super pissed about this because Rico's like super macho man of the house. He's super offended that his wife is seeking financial support elsewhere.
Yes, I think that is absolutely a lot to do with it, which I hate. I don't like that side of Rico.
No.
I will, though, say I would probably be a little upset.
Yeah,
if if I just found this out.
Right. I don't disagree with that either.
Right. But we know that it's more than just that.
With Rico.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think anybody would be upset
Angelica,
about that.
what the fuck? She didn't have to say it like that.
She threw Vanessa under the bus by
Yes,
doing that.
That was really fucked up.
And that shows that really is her character here.
Which makes you think, was she even right about Rebecca being...
No, that's what I was saying earlier. I think that she's just jealous of Rebecca, and that's why she was acting like such a bitch about paying for her funeral and everything, because she was jealous.
From what I've seen of the two characters, Becky seemed very sweet.
Yeah, except for there was that line that Brody was saying about how she didn't like dolphins because
Oh, the tuna.
yeah, and then he's like, I remember one time because Rico was trying to sell them a cremation vessel that was like a dolphin, and Brody was like, nah, she didn't like dolphins. One time, someone told her not to eat tuna because of dolphins getting trapped in the nets, and she said, "Fuck dolphins. I want a Niçoise salad."
I do remember that.
I had to look up what a Niçoise salad is, and it's a salad
tuna
that has
salad?
tuna in it. Yeah, I didn't know that. But I do agree. She definitely was portrayed as more of like a sweeter girl. And Angelica is more of a bitch. So,
Clearly.
yeah. Then Claire walks in on Brody and the other friends of Becky's snorting her ashes. And this is right after Gabe freaked out on her and left, so she's not in a good mood.
True.
And she flips out on them and starts screaming at them and calling them morons and losers and disgusting and junkies. And Nate tries to calm her down and escorts her out. And on the way out, she's like, yeah, well, we'll see you back here real soon and maybe we'll be snorting you next time. But honestly, valid because what the fuck?
That was weird. We didn't talk about that plan. I thought they were going to spread our ashes.
Yeah. Yeah. Literally. So weird. But yeah, just goes to emphasize the dumb point.
The thought process.
Right. So then Nate is on the beach with Brenda. This is getting towards the end of the episode now, reading her his notes from his dream. Brenda starts quoting his words. So he's reading and then she starts finishing his sentence. And she's like, it's the, I don't know how to pronounce this. It's the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, which is a 700 verse Hindu scripture that is part of the Indian epic Mahabharata. It's one of the most important spiritual and philosophical texts in Indian literature and has been influential across the world. It covers themes like duty, dharma, selfless action, karma, devotion, bhakti, and the eternal soul, Atman. I don't know if I'm saying those things right. And timeless insights on how to live with purpose, courage, and inner peace. Brenda reminds Nate that he read this Bhagavad Gita at her house. And so then Nate is like, oh, so this was really just like recycled shit from my brain. And
Which is mostly what dreams are.
yeah. And that's,
But he was kind of hoping that it had more meaning. But it does.
It does. Yeah. For sure. And then in the midst of all this, his cell phone rings and it's David calling to tell him that he passed his funeral director's licensing exam. And
he said, you told me about, I got the test results. You didn't tell me about the test results or whatever.
Yeah, you're right.
So another fake out.
I didn't even put that together.
Because you look at his face too and he's like.
Nate's like, fuck. And then he says, oh, I had forgotten all about that. But David says that he's really proud of him on the phone, which was sweet.
Yeah, it was really sweet.
Yay for Nate. But obviously, he's not really giving a fuck about that right now. He's a lot more on his mind. And then Brenda gets up to leave and Nate asks if he can come over later. And she says, not tonight. I'm having enough trouble just being with myself right now. Ugh. I'm sorry. It's not you. It's me. I'm fucked up. You can't fix it. And she walks away. So sad. It just... I just want...
Coming from her, too, it's just is like...
I want them to just hug because I know Nate...
They both need it.
Yes. And so the episode ends with Nate staring off into the ocean and imagining himself walking into the ocean. And then Nathaniel is sitting next to him on the beach.
I thought he did walk into the ocean.
No, he was imagining it because then he like imagines himself and then it shows him sitting back on the beach again.
Oh, yeah.
Nathaniel's sitting there next to him on the beach and says, you're in the game now, buddy boy, whether you like it or not. So Nate's just contemplating life and death hardcore. But that's where the episode ends.
Huh.
Super interesting. We have to
Mayday cremate.
Mayday cremate, and then we have to do our blind ranking.
Okay.
Mayday cremate, we could do Angelica, the dick doctor, and the David's date, the fireman.
Okay.
Who would you mate?
I'd probably... Oh, I know.
I know too. I wonder if you're going to say the same as me. Probably.
I'm going to mate the hot guy.
Okay.
The fireman.
Okay. Why?
Because he's sexy. Mm-hmm. I'm going to date the doctor.
Okay.
Because duh, marry the doctor.
Okay.
and I'm going to kill that motherfucking bitch Angelica. Or cremate her.
Okay.
And then I'm going to snort her ass.
To be fair, I don't think she was involved in the snorting of the ashes.
Okay.
She wasn't there, but
I rescind my
you
snorting.
could still snort ashes if you want. I don't care. Okay, that's not what I thought that you were going to do, but I love it, and I love the reasoning. I am going to mate Angelica.
That's what I was going to do.
Yeah, because I don't want to marry her, but I do for sure want to cremate the doctor because he was such a dick.
So we're mating by default.
Yeah. And I mean, she's attractive enough looking woman.
And she's young still, so she's probably got some stamina.
Yeah. And I'm going to date the fireman because, I mean, only if he's okay with it. Because
Oh, true that.
it would have to be,
Do you like butt stuff?
he'd have to be on board. And there's that, I guess. So we'll just pretend it all falls into place
We just know that
perfectly.
he's demisexual and likes men. He could still be bisexual
Yeah,
or pansexual.
he could
So you never know. But that's what I was going to do too.
Yeah.
For the same reasoning.
be. Okay, fine. Who would your MVP be for this episode?
Ooh, this was a tough one to pick an MVP.
Oh.
Probably Nikolai.
Ooh, I like that. I was thinking maybe Keith for having such strong boundaries.
Yes. I hands down have to say Keith.
I really do like Nikolai though because he was like so here for the chaos.
Yep. He was great, but he just wasn't as good as Keith.
Yeah. Keith really is just a stand-up guy.
Yes. And he had a lot of
shows
moves
that.
made in this episode.
For sure.
I would do that.
I agree.
Unfortunately, because I don't know if Nikolai is ever going to get another shot.
yeah. I agree. I'm not thinking of any other contenders for this one.
There was a lot of shown.
People are trying, but they're not doing their best
Yeah.
right now. Like Nate needs to fucking talk to people about his diagnosis and he can't keep holding this in.
Brenda's struggling.
Brenda needs to stop pushing Nate away and everyone away. David needs to stop bending to everything that he thinks people want him to be. That's just his default. Like he needs to get out of that.
Yep. Claire needs to
And-
take a deep breath.
Yeah. And a step back.
She's not off on what she's feeling.
No.
I think she's spot on.
Which is why she needs to take a step back.
Yes. And Ruth's just a mess.
She's trying her best, but she's still not hitting the nail on the head. Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 13, 1 being the best, 13 being the worst, and we don't know what the other ones consist of, where would you rank this episode?
Before we talked about it, I would have ranked it pretty low. But the more that we unpack on it, I think it's got a lot of foundational things that are going to play into the rest of the season.
The whole life and death, gambling with life and death thing, that really hit me.
And there's a lot going on.
The ecstasy scene brings it up a notch for sure.
True that. So 1 being the best, I would do a 5.
That's a safe bet.
Is it?
I think it is because we don't know what's coming.
So half of 13 is like what? 7.5, 6.5. Yes, 6.5. So it's above the 50% threshold.
Okay.
Would you think it would be in the 25%?
I don't know. That's the thing. I did enjoy it, but
I
5
would
or
do
4? Should we just say 5?
Yeah.
We'll just lock it in at 5. We're gonna go with 5.
Okay.
It's a freaking.
We're locked in.
All right.
Thanks
Anything
for
else
watching.
that we need to cover? I don't think so.
We do need to cover that they have to rate us 5 stars.
Yes, please rate us 5 stars. Share us with your friends. Like this video. Subscribe. Follow. Comment. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, all this stuff. Reach out to us.
Tell us what you would rank this in a blind ranking.
Yes. You should rate it too.
But no cheating. You can't look ahead and read the synopsis of all the episodes. Just off
Even
the top
that
of your
wouldn't
head.
be helpful. You'd have to watch
Yeah,
them.
true. Cool. All right, well, we'll see you next week for episode 2 of season 2.
Bye, guys.
Woo.